Hello, gunfighters, and welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting and gun-related stuff the right way with God at the center. Gonna try something a little bit different. You guys are probably familiar if you've listened for any length of time. The Better Know a Cartridge episodes. They're kind of short episodes on a pretty particular topic, so I think I'm gonna forego the lengthy bio. Try to abbreviate it. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Now let's talk about a cartridge. The 8.6 Blackout Black Creedmoor. It's not really a finalized cartridge, so new and hot off the presses. Who knows what they're actually going to adopt it and call it. If you remember, a similar thing happened with the 300 Blackout. It was originally called the 300 Whisper, I believe. Some minor variations in the two, and then they settled on the 300 Blackout. Pretty much everybody knows it today as the 300 Blackout or 300 BLK, and probably that will be what happens with the 8.6. This was a Patreon request. If you want to contact me, goodshepherdtraining.com. If you want to become a patron and support, go to Patreon. They asked about this cartridge, and I'm going to try and give you my honest thoughts on it. I don't have any sponsors here. I don't take sponsors. I've refused a couple recently because I don't want that. You get plenty of that garbage bribery on YouTube, the gun industry, where somebody sends somebody something for free and or pays them to give a good review on it. They tell you how great it is and that you should buy it. I don't do that here. I fear God more than man. And the Bible says you shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Hopefully you appreciate that. The 8.6 Blackout. Because I think I'm going to rag on this cartridge a little bit. I think it's mostly a way to separate you from your money. There'll be a certain subset of people shooters that this comes out and they think, oh, it's bigger, it must be more practical, better than the 300 Blackout. I don't own a 300 Blackout. Never had, never really wanted to, let alone the 8.6. I think the 300 Blackout's an okay cartridge. And I'll give you, hopefully, why I think they created this. The point of the 300 Blackout, mostly, and it has a lot of uses, it has quite a big variation in bullet weight range and things like that. But the main selling point of this is you can shoot a subsonic round out of an AR-15. Most of you listening pretty much know that. 220 grain bullet at right around the speed of sound. Basically, similar bullet weight ranges and velocity to a 45 ACP, which a classic loading for that is 230 grains at a little bit under the speed of sound. Anyway, that's the 300 Blackout. You can load lighter bullets faster. And I guess somebody came along and thought, well, what if I want to do the same thing out of my AR-10? What might one do to shove a big bullet under the speed of sound out of an AR-10? And generally when this happens, you look at these cartridges, have a really big bullet comparatively to most modern cartridges like a 223, a 308. They give you a big, long bullet and a much smaller, comparatively, powder charge, like the 300 Blackout. Compare the bullet to powder ratio on that versus a 223. Basically they looked at the 6.5 Creedmoor. It was already designed for long bullets, and they thought, what can we do with this? Let's neck it up. That's a pretty common thing in wildcatting, and shove a bigger bullet in there. Now this cartridge is too new for my Cartridges of the World book or the Hornady reloading manual that I have. Even Wikipedia, what I'm looking at, only has one loading for this. And that's a 288 grain bullet at 1,000 feet a second. So we're pushing it right up to the speed of sound with a 288 grain bullet. 955 foot-pounds. I also see a loading on another website for a 300 grain Sierra Match King. And it doesn't list the velocity, but if it's that bullet weight, I assume it's right around 1,000 feet a second, maybe a little bit slower to be subsonic. Since it's necked up to 338, there are quite a few choices for 338 bullets. That's a pretty good option. I mean, when they were going to neck this up, because those bullets are not super obscure. The 338 Federal is a thing. The 338 Win Mag is a thing. issue with that is most of these bullets are probably going to be designed for much higher velocities for expansion. So you get a big heavy bullet, but how good is the terminal performance going to be? It's not energy foot-pounds that kills an animal, it's destroying of tissue that kills an animal. Now here's my issue with this. If you want to shoot subsonic, have an AR type platform, why not just go with the 300 Blackout? There may be somebody out there that just owns an AR-10 that does not own any AR-15s. I think I might know one of those men. But in general, people that own an AR-10 are probably going to already own an AR-15. If you want to shoot subsonic, let's be honest, you're probably doing it mostly for the cool factor of it. You're talking about hunting most medium and smaller game. I think the 300 Blackout will kill most of those things at reasonable ranges. If you want to hunt with a suppressor, something bigger than a deer or a hog, I think that there are far better choices in a bolt gun, even if you want to run a suppressor. So it begs the question, why? And I think, honestly, mostly because there will be a certain subset of people that really, really want it because it's bigger. And that's fine. Like, if you earn that money lawfully and you want to spend it on that, go right at it. I'm trying, and I have been trying, to think of a good reason to own this. Like a practical reason. And I'll be honest, I can't. Even with the 458 Socom, which we just did an episode on, that you can get a 600 grain bullet, which is even heavier, at a subsonic velocity, in an AR-15 platform. Cheaper, lighter, handier platform. So if you wanted to shoot a really big bullet subsonic, you can do that with a bigger, beefier bullet. Your velocity is limited to the speed of sound, which is not exactly. It changes on elevation and even humidity and things like that. But let's say, for the sake of argument, 1,000 feet a second. If your goal is to shoot a big, heavy bullet at subsonic velocities, why wouldn't you go with the 458 Socom? That's an obscure cartridge, but it's less obscure than this. You don't need an AR-10, you can do it in an AR-15, which is lighter and handier, and you're getting a bullet that's double the mass. It's 600 grains versus 300 grains. So really the only reason I can think of why is because somebody could. Maybe I'm missing something here. If you want to contact me again, goodshepherdtraining.com. If you really just love the AR-10 and you want to shoot subsonic in it, you just want the round because it's cool and you want it, you own a 338 suppressor already, you hand load. Again, this is 338 diameter, so most of your 30 caliber cans, I should say, are not going to work with this. The bullet is too big. You're going to need something for a 338 or bigger, a can like that for this. There is a very small niche market that falls into that category. But that's my take on the 8.6 Blackout. I'm not anti-new cartridges. I think there's a lot of good cartridges that come out. But there are many cartridges that come out every year, and a lot of them never catch on. I think there's good reason. They just really don't bring much to the table. I tried to think of a practical reason to have this cartridge. I really honestly can't. Again, if you want one and you earn the money lawfully, have at it. Have fun. Support the industry. Anyway, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoyed the content here, if you want to support, I thought it was worth a fraction of the cost of a box of ammo, let alone the fraction of the cost of a box of 8.6, and you want the blessing of being part of a really cool tribe of men, consider becoming a patron. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, thanks for listening. Have a blessed day. The tactical verse of the day. For I trust in your word. Never snatch out of my mouth a word of truth. As followers of Christ, we are called to speak the truth in love, but still speak the truth.